Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency!
Thanks, losers.
Hey, what's up, big guys out there? Good to be back here. Fantasy Football Consistency Show. I'm your host, Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. As always, we are proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. Make sure you check that out. Go to the internet, find Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I can say that. Podcast Network. And you can see all the podcasts we have. I think they're up to 24 different ones now, maybe even closer to 30. I don't know. There's a ton of them and all kinds of stuff. Everything from Dynasty to IDP to consistency, which of course we do well, and everything else in between. Make sure you check that out. All kinds of great stuff, all kinds of great people. Jim Day, Andy Singleton. But most importantly, this one is Bob Lung and my man Ron Rigney. Ron, how's it going?
Doing good, man. You know, we're looking at the date here today. We're getting close to the Kings Classic. We're getting close to the Midwest Expo, and that makes me ask the question, where in the hell did the summer go?
Oof.
Man.
I'm telling you. Yeah, I mean, last night I went to one of my first of two fantasy, yeah, it is a fantasy, my Hall of Fame weekend, where I'm driving Champ Bailey this year. And I looked at the calendar. That's 2.5 weeks away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just nuts. That it's that close already. I mean, I didn't think about it, but, you know, I mean, the surgery certainly kind of took a month and kind of blanked that out for me. I was kind of just, you know, getting through all that. But, yeah, it's crazy. Camps will be opening this next week, right? Football is upon us. I mean, we feel like football is upon us all the time, and we're always loving it. Yeah, so like you said, first off, like you said, Kings Classic is coming up on Saturday, August 17th, Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you're anywhere near the area and you're listening to this, check this out on Saturday because they are going to allow us to open the doors this year and you can watch the Kings Classic drafts live in action. They will be live on Sirius Radio, Fantasy Sports Radio, but you can come in and watch no extra charge, whatever it costs you to get into the hall. So if you always wanted to tour the Hall of Fame and you're a big fantasy fan, perfect scenario. Come there, pay the fee, tour the thing, and then watch some of the drafts. We're having an auction draft from 10 a.m. to about 12:31, and then from 2 to 4 will be the snake draft. Like you said, some of the best in the business. Brad Evans from Yahoo, Dave Richards from CBS Sports, Mike Clay, ESPN. We've got guys from Football Guys, Football Diehards, Bob Harris. Holy cow. From Fantasy Alarm, Howard Bender's coming in this year to join our man Colby Conway in the chair for the Fantasy Alarm. That's a big freaking deal. And of course, Sirius Radio is going to be here. Joe Dolan, I'm sure, Matt Camp, Fensty, all the boys will be here. It'll be a fantastic time. Do not miss that one. Then, the next day, Sunday, August 18th, Midwest Fantasy Football Expo. A lot of those guys from that event will be down there, including us, Ron and I, Colby and everybody. From noon to 6, Canton, Ohio, Cultural Center, downtown Canton. It's literally 2 miles from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So maybe make a weekend out of it, spend a night, hang out, and then come down to the expo from noon to 6. Live podcast. We're going to do a live mock draft in the middle of the day. Panel discussions, Q&As, 30 or more, actually more than 30 experts will be there from 30 different sites to answer your questions, talk about your keepers, whatever the case may be. Don't miss that. And if you go on MidwestFFExpo.com, use code BIGGUY, you can save $5 off every admission ticket. So get them early, get them ahead of time. It's $20 at the door, $15 if you get ahead of time. But guess what? The swag bag when you walk in the door alone is going to be worth over $100. Everybody's chipping in coupons for, 10% off, $10 off, whatever the case may be. Big Guy Fantasy Sports is giving $10 off for the VIP package just for showing up. So can't beat that as well. So don't forget that. And in the meantime, of course, buy your 2019 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. You can get that on Amazon if you like the hard copy. Then come to the site, use the upgrade code Big Guy on that as well. And for only $10, you get the VIP access for the whole year. And people are using that a lot this year. Very happy about that. A lot of people are doing the upgrade, so very, very pleased with that. So lots of stuff going on, Ron. You're going to be in Ohio that weekend. You're excited. I know I'm excited. The wife will be here this year, so I'm not sure how excited she is, but we'll see.
I'm sure she's pretty fired up. She seemed really excited when you guys were down here. So
yeah.
She was counting down the seconds.
As soon as I mentioned the word fantasy football, her eyes just no, they don't light up. They just roll back in the back of her head. I like to say they light up, but they don't. It's literally an eye roll, like, oh Jesus, here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's all good. So that's what's going on. Lots of stuff going on. So tonight we're going to talk about the running backs and which of these guys can bounce back from their consistency. Maybe from last year they had a down year, or maybe just based on their ADP that we just feel that they're going to break out this year. Their ADP is just way too low right now where they're sitting, and we feel like they're going to be in a much better spot at the end of the year. So, Ron, you've had some time to look at it. I'll let you start off as always. Who's the first guy on your list as you look down? And you don't have to start in order. You can just, whoever you got just off the top of your head, or I'm sure you've taken notes, and that you feel like, man, based on that ADP or after last year's performance, you really see a rebound/breakout season coming from this player.
I think one of them that kind of stands out to me, and we kind of know what's there. We know he hasn't really gotten the full share of the opportunities, full load yet, and I think that's coming at least for part of the season. And that's a guy that I look at as Nick Chubb. And Nick Chubb is a guy that I think, the talent's there. We kind of saw, what he had to offer when he was able to kind of get the lion's share of the carries. In our system, he's 50% consistent, 8 out of 16. So he was, he got run in every game. But the only bad thing about it is about 8 games in, he's going to have to share the load again. But I think where you're drafting him at, and I think, just with him being able to be the lead dog for the better half of the season, I think he's going to give you a lot of production there. When we look at our fantasy football calculator here, he's sitting there at 2.9. I think that's a pretty solid place. But I think based upon the consistent performance he's going to give you for the first 8 weeks of the season, I think that he's going to outperform that draft spot, at least for those first 8 weeks. And it wouldn't shock me if he, even though you have Kareem Hunt kind of coming back in the fray, I wouldn't shock me at all if he kind of keeps that lion's share of the touches and keeps the majority of the touches going down the stretch. And when you head into the fantasy playoffs, I think he's going to get you there. And I think he's going to give you enough to kind of keep you going if you're making a run.
Right. Well, and a couple of things. So I wasn't really big on, Nick Chubb at the beginning of the year because I was kind of like, man, I don't want him to share carries. That's really going to devalue him. But, the one thing I just thought of over the last week or so was, the New Orleans Saints had 2 guys a couple years ago in Kamara and, I went brain dead. Mark Ingram, who shared the carries and shared the touches, and yet both were extremely consistent that year. And I just wonder if maybe we can see the same thing happening here. I mean, this offense is going to be on fire. I mean, with Mayfield, Beckham, Landry, Njoku, teams aren't going to be able to focus on any one player like they used to. Actually, there was never any players they used to be able to focus on the Browns, but we've taken a big leap. But I just, in the second half last year, Chubb put up 75% consistency. So if we can get 75% in the first half, even if he gets, let's say, 60% in the second half, that's still not bad. And the fact that your team's going to be like maybe 6-2 at that point, if you can, be smart, maybe grab Kareem Hunt or have a maybe a guy that might come on. Maybe you get a rookie like a David Montgomery or somebody that might have a great second half after they kind of kick in, kind of like Chubb did last year. It may be a good idea to do something like that just in case. But I feel like Hunt is going to get the carries, but I'm also a little worried now because Hunt is one bad decision away from not even being on that team. Mm-hmm. And he almost did it a couple weeks ago, but luckily nobody had enough good video of him in that bar in Cleveland. Let's hope he can keep his head straight. But the fact that he did that again, even if it was, quote, not his fault or not, he didn't do anything wrong, the fact that you're putting yourself in that situation, Kareem Hunt, tells me you're still not thinking very well. And so that's what scares me a little bit. And now I'm starting to actually lean more towards Nick Chubb as a good value because I think Kareem Hunt's going to do something dumb again, or at least dumb enough that it's going to kick him out a couple more games, or who knows, or maybe John Dorsey said, I gave you a shot, you screwed up, you're done. We don't know. But right now I'm kind of definitely leaning towards Chubb a little bit more in an auction draft now and actually bidding on him, trying to get him as a running back, as my running back 2 basically. But still, if I can get him at a good value, I think that's perfect. So, yeah, great choice there. Certainly can't argue with that. As I go down the list, I think the one that I shouldn't say, I will call it a rebound, because David Johnson last year certainly did not have the year that we expected out of a David Johnson. 2 years ago, back in 2016 when he was fantastic and he was the number 1 running back, then he had the wrist injury. Last year he comes back, not a great year, a lot of issues, coaching, quarterback, OC changes, but he certainly had a better second half than he did first half. And while he wasn't still great, a lot of people were really disappointed. I really feel like, this offense, this scenario this year, he's going to have the comeback that we expect. People are like, they could see him getting back to the number 1 spot. Well, certainly he's got the potential. He's certainly got the talent. It's really going to help, hinge on Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray can be at least a very serviceable, quarterback who could keep plays going with his legs and his arm, and can keep teams from focusing on stopping David Johnson. And if this offense is as, high-powered as, but remember, we all heard about this with Chip Kelly when he came in. We all expected huge things and didn't work out that well. So I know it's not the same offense, but you get my point. I believe David Johnson, even though he's now at 105, 106 draft-wise, I still think that, if Zeke's little incident and now this guy's filing charges, if this gets him in a little more trouble, David Johnson may be a pick that you pick ahead of Zeke, and he might be able to earn those kind of numbers to get back to that point like he was in 2016. What are your thoughts on David Johnson, Ron?
Well, it's a little risky just because of all the question marks that are around him on offense. And you kind of went through and you mentioned, new quarterback, new coaching staff. But one of the things that you can't argue with last year is David Johnson was 5th in the league in touches with 308.
Right.
And I don't think people, when you look at the numbers that he put up, and especially when you look at consistency that he put up, and you look at, what you paid for him in the first round of the draft, the production didn't really match up, but it wasn't for lack of getting the ball. And I think we kind of talked about this the other day off air a little bit, is there's a couple guys at the top of this list. We might talk about, quite a few of them, that when you look at the touches leaders, when you look at the rushing attempts leaders, those guys are up there. So I don't think it's a question of him getting any less touches. You might see him get more than 308 touches, which I wouldn't really be surprised at just because of what's going on around him. So I think it's a fair price to pay there, but it's a little bit questionable as far as, the workload is going to be there. But on the other hand, is the production going to match what you're spending for that top pick? But the guy's going to get the touches at the end of the day, so I think it makes it worth it.
Gotcha. All right. Who you got next on your list for rebounding or just breaking out this year based on their ADP?
Well, as I move it down here a little bit, guy that I like a lot, and I know that they signed a pretty hefty insurance policy for him as far as C.J. Anderson there in Detroit. But the guy that I like a lot is Kerryon Johnson, and I think Kerryon Johnson showed some flashes of it last year. I know we've talked about him a little bit in some of the previews we've done. But just overall, I think that as the year kind of went on, he seemed to be like one of those guys that the more he got the ball, the more impressive he looked. And I think with where he's going at 310, I'm 100% happy with him if I can get him as my RB2. If you can get him as your RB3, if you go first, first two rounds, you go running back, and he's sitting there in the third round and he's staring you in the face, I have no problem with that start at all. Trying to find, lost my window here. I was trying to see how consistent he was last year. Let me
I got it up
okay.
here actually.
Okay.
So the amazing thing was
70%.
Yeah, he was 70%, and to be honest with you, he would have kind of quote got the hey, you qualify as one of those first rookie guys who earned over 60%. But I've always kind of had you need to play at least 12 games. Kind of you can't just go 3 for 4 and go hey, this guy's a stud. But he was damn close enough. If he plays one more game, he still would have probably earned 60%, so you could almost put him on the list and put an asterisk by his name. But I think even more impressive was when he, the first 2 games, obviously getting used to the offense, full speed of the NFL. But weeks 3 through 10, he averaged 15.4 fantasy points a game and had a 75% consistency. If you would annualize that out, he would have been 10th in total points. So, like you said, I think I like this kid a lot. I've gotten him in some drafts. A lot of times, if I go wide receiver early, I kind of miss out. But I've had the opportunity to go 2 wide receivers and get him in the third round. It's tough to pick him as your one, but then by then you're in the third round. What do you expect? I mean, you're not going to get an RB1 at that point. But I have him ranked pretty high. I have him 13th overall, so that's pretty damn close to an RB1. And so there's no question that this guy certainly is maybe not due for a rebound, but certainly due for a breakout. So can't argue that.
And the main thing with him is health. I mean, he played 10 games. When
right.
you look at what he did across those 10 games, you kind of looked at it from a consistency standpoint, but something that's a little sneaky with him as well, I don't think a lot of people realize until you kind of dig into it. He had 32 catches in 10 games as well. Which is
he's a 3-down back. There's no question.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, like I said, C.J. Anderson's there. He's going to pound it a little bit, but I don't think he's going to get enough opportunity that's really going to hurt Kerryon Johnson. And I think Kerryon Johnson's going to, yet again, kind of like we said with Nick Chubb, I think he's going to outperform that draft spot.
Didn't behind Kerryon last year, didn't they have LeGarrette Blount?
Yes.
As kind of the C.J. Anderson of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't use him much. They may have used him on a few goal lines, but obviously they had to use him once he was hurt. But yeah, definitely. So sticking with that kind of third round, and honestly, probably the reason why I usually don't pick Kerryon Johnson is the guy that I really like a lot, and I think is due for a great rebound. And getting back to where he was just a couple years ago is the guy right in front of him ADP wise, and that's Devontae Freeman. So normally I'm sitting there between Devontae Freeman and Kerryon Johnson. I'm thinking Freeman just because I know he's done it and he's done it often. And now the fact that Tevin Coleman is gone, Freeman is only 27 years old. He's 100% healthy. That offense, is always high powered. With the passing game, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, even Austin Hooper certainly keeps teams honest. He's not a great fantasy asset, but he's a great asset for the NFL. And Freeman comes back. He missed basically the entire season last year. Never really got anything going. And sitting there at RB 16. Is he still? He's RB 17 now. Pick 32. So again, late third round. I think. Obviously in the Scott Fish Bowl, I got him in the 4th or 5th round, but that's because all the running backs and or quarterbacks and tight ends are being drafted in the first 3 rounds, so that's why you don't get a chance. But definitely a lot of love for Freeman. I'm expecting a solid rebound, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets back into the top 12, both fantasy points and consistency. Are you feeling any love for Devontae?
As we go on with draft season, he's grown on me a little bit. I never really was a big Freeman guy in the past, but Tevin Coleman leaving town I think helps him out a little bit. Although I do like Ito Smith a lot later on, mm-hmm. But I don't think he's going to eat into Freeman's production enough. When I look into what he's done when he's been healthy, I mean he's averaging anywhere from 4.4 to 4.8 yards per carry. He's getting you a handful of catches. So he's getting you a few receptions here and there. He's scoring double-digit touchdowns. And you hate to see a running back come off an injury, but at the same time, you kind of almost like to see him coming off a year where he only played 2 games because he's going to be fresh. And I think that's a big thing that you're going to see there. But, yeah, that offense is going to score points. We talked about the coaching staff changes. I think that's going to help Freeman a bit. It wouldn't shock me if you see a little bit of a rebound from him. He's just not a guy that I feel like he's fallen to me where I've gotten good value for him, whether it be auction value or whether it be Scott Fishbowl, either one. But not a guy I have a lot of shares in, but I could definitely see where he could outperform, what he did last full season in 2017, 865 yards.
Definitely. All right, so let's keep looking at the list here, whether it's ADP or just guys you think are heading towards breakout. Who you got next on your list?
Well, this is a guy that we tend to like quite a bit, and he was a big disappointment last year, and I think that there's reason to believe that he could have a nice little bounce back here, and he's a guy I know that we had a lot in as RB2, RB3.
Oh, yeah.
And you really, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So,
oh, yeah.
Kenyon Drake's a guy that I think could really do some things for you where you're getting him at. And as I look at the ADPs here, as I scroll down, Kenyon Drake is sitting here, Fantasy Football Calculator, at 411, which I think is fair. Shot he could outperform that, but all I'm looking for is him to perform at that level. I don't need, if I'm getting him as my 11th pick in the 4th round, I don't necessarily need him to outperform that by a ton. I just need him to perform at that level or something close to it, and I think he's going to be able to do that. I mean, I think it's just, we were kind of scratching our head last year, him along with a couple other guys that we liked as our second and third guys. Just the usage of him. Why was he not getting used more? Frank Gore is there. Frank Gore is about 70 years old at this point. He's still getting it done a little bit. But Kenyon Drake's a solid athlete, can do a little bit of everything. And I think that new coaching staff, not a lot there to challenge him in Miami. Miami doesn't have a whole lot going on in the passing game. They're going to have to rely on Kenyon Drake, and I think that's going to see a bump in his usage. I think that's going to see a bump in his production.
So one thing, I don't know if I told you about it. So I was doing this like NFL. So think fantasy draft, but you have the ability to draft anyone in the history of the NFL. And I was doing this on a different website. It wasn't through like a site where you could like literally pick the players and add. You had to literally go in, put it. It was like a forum, so you put in who you picked. But we were doing this draft, and basically the concept was you had to draft every position on the teams. So it wasn't just, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. It was offensive linemen, offensive tackle, offensive guards, defensive tackles, defensive ends. So really fun. Basically, I'm not going to lie, I just took my list from the Hall of Fame site and picked every Hall of Famer that was available. It was interesting. I think there was 10 guys doing it. But the one thing that just blew me away, because I went also to Pro Football Reference, which is a great site for just getting just pure stats for everything. And do you know who what player has the 4th highest rushing yards in the history of the NFL?
It's Frank Gore.
Frank Gore.
Yeah.
He is actually ahead of Adrian Peterson by 1,500 yards.
No, when you look at his entire body of work, I mean, Frank Gore is
unbelievable.
He's a freak.
Yeah. I just look at that and go, I know I like Frank Gore, and he's a gritty guy, but I would never believe that he is in the top 10. Like, I even see Curtis Martin go, yeah, okay, Curtis Martin. I get it. Sure. Granted, Gore has probably played the most years of these guys. Most of it. Well, Emmett's, I guess, got the same amount. He's got 15 years. Gore's is in his 14th or 15th. But yeah, it just blew me away when I saw that. And then no other like current players close. LaShawn McCoy's 25th. Marshawn Lynch is 29th. And that's the only. There's 4 active players in the top 35. It's Gore, Peterson at 8, McCoy at 25, and Lynch at 29. It just blows me away. Yeah. So anyway, hats off to Frank Gore. This is why we loved him in the past. That's for sure. But yeah, going back to Kenyon Drake, can't agree more on your analysis. Certainly one of the guys that I have in the guide as a definitely an undervalued player. As you said before, if he just matches last year's numbers, which people think sucked, but he was 14th in total points, so that's almost an RB1. And he was 22nd in consistency at 56%, so that's an RB2. So if he just matches those numbers as an RB2 draft guy, a guy being drafted as an RB2, I think we'd be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest. We'd also be disappointed if he doesn't do better than that, because he doesn't have Frank, or he doesn't have the idiot Adam Gase there screwing things up. I have to believe that this guy who came in as the coach, and God forbid, I don't even know what his name is going to sit there and look at the tape and go, geez, what were they doing? Let's give this guy the ball. Let's give him 15 touches a game or 20 touches a game, and let Balaj be the backup and, spell him occasionally. But, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a big fan of the Drake and can't argue with that at all. All right, so I'll go back to my list here. And so right below him is, of course, my man crush of the year. So I will take him. And I'm going to be honest with you, dude. If this guy doesn't work out and at least match last year's numbers, I'm going to be called out by so many people in this industry, because everybody thinks I'm a nutcase for this, and that's Chris Carson. Now, Chris Carson last year, as it says in the guide, this guy's getting no love. Last year, he was 15th in total points, missed 2 games. And to be honest with you, he was only 3 points behind Drake, who played all 16 games, and he was 13th. He was 71% consistency, which ranked him top 12. Mike Davis left the field, has left the team, and he's got nobody but Rashad Penny behind him, who is underwhelmed since he's been in the league. Okay, so I get it. Penny will certainly be more valuable this year. I don't argue with that at all. But my thought is he takes Mike Davis's role as third down back, spelling Carson, but I just feel like Carson still gets double-digit carries. And when he did do that last year, he averaged 17.1 fantasy points a game and had a 91% clutch rate. So getting him as an RB2, and his ADP right now is 5th round, RB26. So he's out of the RB2 range now. Pick 53. Rashad Penny is still 2 rounds or a round and a half behind him. But here's one thing that I found extremely interesting, that is a piece of information that really shocked me. One of the sites that does, one of the big sites in Vegas posted their odds for winning the rushing title. Do you know who was 4th? After Zeke, after Barkley.
Could it be Chris Carson?
It was Chris Carson.
Ah.
Chris Carson was at 13-1. He was actually had the same odds as David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, and Melvin Gordon, I think. So if Vegas is feeling like this guy, Vegas is not going to put odds that low on a guy unless they believe he can do it. Because if they didn't, he'd be 25-1 to me would have been really good odds for him. But the fact that he was 13-1, I got to find this because it just stunned me. Let me see if I can find Vegas odds rushing title 2019. Odds for 20. Yeah, here you go. This one's different because it's a different site. But this one has Zeke at 3-1, Barkley at 5-1, Gurley at 9-1, Chubb at 6-1, Bell at 8-1, McCaffrey, Nixon, Mixon, but then Carson is at 22-1, which is tied with David Johnson and Melvin Gordon. That's what I had seen. Different odds, but they're still tied. But the fact that he's even in the conversation with these folks tells me that, this guy's got a little more love than, what I think a lot of people are expecting. Maybe this is at the Vegas Insider. So, like I said, that kind of gives me a little better feeling about Chris Carson, because, when you hear people beat you down and say, Chris Carson can't do it, he can't do it, Rashad Penny's the man, and then I'm sitting there going, God, am I the only one that believes this? So, anyway, all right. So, back to you.
Well, real quick before we move on from Chris Carson, too, when you're looking at it just from a rushing standpoint, Chris Carson had the fourth most yards per game in the league last year, and he was ahead of guys. He averaged 82.2 yards per game on the ground, ahead of Saquon Barkley, ahead of James Conner, ahead of Melvin Gordon. So that kind of tells you right there, what he's able to do. And he's a guy that he's not flashy, and I don't know if some of that has to do with the fact that he does play in Seattle.
Right.
But I'm kind of there with you, and he's another guy too that it hasn't really fallen to me to where I feel like I'm getting a good value on him. So not to say that I don't think it's definitely a possibility, because it's definitely there. As I roll down our list here, let's see, who do we want to talk about next? The guy that I found myself with in a couple of places because he's awfully affordable, new coaching regime, and that's Ronald Jones in Tampa. And
okay,
not necessarily am I expecting huge things out of Ronald Jones. I'm not drafting him as one of my lead guys. But at this point, I'm getting him as about my fourth or fifth running back. I'm okay with that, because I think that I don't know necessarily if it was just maybe growing pains from being a rookie. I'm not really sure what it came down to. But the fact of the matter is, I really think that, there's going to be jobs up for grabs there. I think when you get, Bruce Arians coming into town, I think that there's going to be a competition back there. They got Peyton Barber there as well. And so you could see maybe a 50-50 split there. You could see it go one way or another. You could see them go with the hot hand. But I think if there's an injury, I think if there's something where, it's one of those hot hand situations, I think that out of the two, Ronald Jones is the better athlete. He was a guy that I thought was really impressive coming out of USC. Didn't really translate last year. But I just think of where his ADP is at right now. Let me find it here. In the 8th round, I got him in Scott Fishbowl, and it's like we talked about, it's a little skewed there. I think he's my 5th running back. I feel great about having him as my 5th running back.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, if Peyton Barber gets hurt, there's nobody else there, and he's in a Bruce Arians offense. I mean, it would be hard to screw that up, and maybe that's all he needed was a little more opportunity. And Arians has certainly taking running backs and made them into superstars. David Johnson is just a perfect example. David Johnson didn't come out of college as a superstar, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he wasn't a first round pick, right? Wasn't he like a 3rd or 4th round pick?
Yeah, he was 3rd or 4th round. I believe he was a Northern Iowa guy.
Right. So I don't have anything consistency information wise or anything to say Ronald Jones certainly could have a breakout, but a lot of times it's just opportunity and the right coach. And this is two perfect examples that, if Peyton Barber doesn't, if Peyton Barber as Peyton Barber, maybe Arians can turn Jones into, even if he can turn him into, David Johnson light, and he's 60 or 70% of David Johnson's production. That's a hell of a value in the 8th round. No question. No question. You got to give that some love. All right. So if Chris Carson isn't my man crush for the year, who is going to kill me if in my credibility if he doesn't come through, I'll tell you who is the second guy on my list that I'm hyping the crap out of and could take a lot of flack if he doesn't come through, and that is one Carlos Hyde. Damian Williams is going off the board in the 2nd round. I'm not saying Damian Williams isn't a very good player. He certainly has had his moments. But he couldn't beat out basically Kenyon Drake in Miami, couldn't hold the job as the starter in Miami, couldn't play a full season in Miami. I just don't see it happening in Kansas City as well. He may start out like wildfire. He might. He might have first 3 or 4 games where everybody's going to be like, see, told you, kid's a stud. But then what if he starts wearing down? What if he just, things aren't going, things don't come together. My thought is that, Hyde is the perfect scenario behind him. He's going in the 10th round. I've gotten him as my RB4 in so many leagues I can't even see straight. And again, just like Ronald Jones, Hyde is one injury away from being the starter in one of the most high-powered offenses in this league. And it was just 2 years ago that Carlos Hyde in San Francisco played all 16 games, was 8th in total points in a PPR format, and was 75% consistent. In San Francisco, not Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, in San Francisco with a bunch of has-been players. So there's no question in my mind that Hyde still has the talent. Last year, the first 4 games of the year when he was the starter for Cleveland before they traded him, he went 4 for 4 in clutch games. I mean, he was certainly showing he can still be the man. And I'm sure that's what Kansas City saw when they grabbed him in the offseason to bring him to the team, because they felt like, well, if Damian Williams, doesn't hold his own, we have a very solid veteran backup here. And who knows, maybe Hyde beats out Williams in the offseason or, whatever the case may be. But again, this is the guy I'm extremely high on. I see extreme value there as your RB4. If you got enough bench space, you have to add him and just say, I'll just wait. Because by midseason, again, kind of like with the Chubb thing, you might be starting Hyde for Chubb if Chubb doesn't get enough touches when Hunt comes in. But my thought is he will. But Carlos Hyde is definitely one of my favorite rebound/breakout guys for this year.
Well, and he's definitely, the more proven commodity there. I mean, Damian Williams could end up, being a stud. I don't know if he's going to justify the second round price tag that he's got out there now, but you kind of hit on it too. Kind of like I mentioned with Ronald Jones, as I'm looking down my Scott Fishbowl roster here, I've got Carlos Hyde, Ronald Jones sitting there, and with Tevin Coleman as my 3, 4, and 5, and I feel pretty good about that behind Barkley and Mark Ingram, guy that we haven't really touched on yet. But I think I might talk about him right now. I might move up the list a little bit because I was thinking we threw him out there. We did not. Mark Ingram sitting at ADP 4.8 right now, so he's sitting there at the 8th pick in the 4th round. Guy that I took as my RB2 in Scott Fishbowl, like I just said, and I think that it's based upon the amount of workload he's going to get there. Yeah, they have a few guys there. Gus Edwards is back there. But I think that, with having the guy they have at quarterback that's unproven, probably going to try to have to do it with his legs a little bit more than his arm at times, having something like Mark Ingram behind them, I think is going to be huge. And I think it's going to be that huge workload that we're looking for. So in the 4th round, I think he could definitely give you, he might even push maybe second round value, because I'm looking at some of these guys that are going at the beginning of the 3rd round into the 2nd round. And I see no reason to believe that Mark Ingram, given the workload he's going to get, could not perform guys like Derrick Henry, like Devonta Freeman, like Leonard Fournette, like Aaron Jones. I think that's very possible that he could move up the charts ahead of those guys, especially with where you're getting him in the 4th round as your RB2. I love having Mark Ingram as my RB2.
Well, and as you said, or as we talked earlier about Ingram and Kamara sharing touches in New Orleans, it's just a few years ago when Ingram was 75% consistent sharing the carries. So now he's the full-time guy on a team that's focused on running the ball. And let's not forget, Mark Ingram can catch the football out of the backfield. He is not just a grinder. I mean, when he, a few years before Kamara got there, he was 92% in a PPR format, and I think was either number 1 or number 2 in consistency that year. So this guy can catch the ball. He's not just a between the tackles kind of guy. So they should be able to use him, as a 3-down back. Now, can he physically keep up? That's going to be the key. I mean, he's certainly not old, but he's not young. I think he's probably in the same realm as Devonta Freeman. My thought is he's around 27, 28. So, they'll have to give him some rest. I'm not expecting this offense to be high-powered, but I'm expecting it to be a grinding offense where, again, they're going to focus on ball control, defense, keeping the ball on the ground. The less they have Lamar Jackson throw, the better off they're going to be. But I like Mark Ingram a lot. I certainly, we were just talking off the air about, this auction drafts I'm in, and I've gotten Mark Ingram for like under $20, and while other top running backs are going 40, 50, 55. So, getting him as, basically an RB3 kind of value in an auction league, certainly nothing to argue with. I mean, again, he's a bell cow back, and there isn't that many of them. So couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and when you look at rushing attempts last year, only had 138 compared to the 230 he had the year before. So he is going to could be a little bit fresher heading into this year. But he also, you mentioned him catching the ball. He has two seasons of 50-plus catches as well. Right. 2015 he had 59, 2017 he had 54. So definitely going to get, and with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, you're definitely going to see some check down stuff. You're definitely going to get some value there in a PPR in the receiving game for sure.
Definitely. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left. Let's the guy I wanted to kind of bring up, again, just because he's there. I'm not sure how you classify him, whether you're going to call him a breakout, but I definitely think he's got to outperform his ADP, and that is one Jordan Howard, who's getting zero love. Miles Sanders, who already got hurt and is already missing some of OTAs in camp, is still being drafted 6 picks ahead of Jordan Howard. But Jordan Howard, again, proved last year in Chicago that he can be a very good back and can be very productive. I don't understand the hate. I love it because I'm just grabbing him and, basically between Carson, Howard, and Hyde, I'm getting these guys in most of my leagues. And nobody seems to be concerned about it. So, like I said, these are definitely the three that if they all come through, my teams are going to do very well this year. Last year in Chicago, with basically sharing with Tyreek Cohen, he was top 24 in both total points and consistency. He goes to Philadelphia, which is certainly a more high-powered offense. They definitely do a lot of RPOs, which maybe not is Howard's thing, but he's caught the ball out of the backfield. He's not terrible. He's certainly not a Tariq Cohen or a Darren Sproles or Corey Clement, but that's not what they got him for. They got him to be the grinder, to be the goal line back, and I think if he just matches last year's numbers, I think right now with that ADP in, like you said, so high up there in round 8, you got to love the value for Jordan Howard.
Well, 9 touchdowns the last 2 years as well, and I think that's something that goes a little bit overlooked. Right. So he's going to be that that goal line guy for sure. So he's going to get you some scores there. But yeah, he had a season. It's really kind of an odd season last year. He had 270 total touches, so he was there in the top 10 as far as getting the ball. It's just didn't do a whole lot with it. Averaged under 4 yards a carry for the first time in his 3 years in the league. But I think fresh start in Philadelphia, I think that's going to help him out quite a bit. And, like you said, Miles Sanders already getting dinged up a little bit. And Philly has a few running backs there that are serviceable, but I don't think that the talent level that they had there with guys like Josh Adams, I don't think that's enough for any of those guys to surpass Jordan Howard. So I'm definitely looking for big things out of Jordan Howard for sure, especially the value you're getting for.
Definitely. All right, well, we've got a couple minutes left, so Ron, why don't you tell everybody how you're doing in baseball? I know I'm not doing very well, but how you're doing with your podcast and everything that you're going on with baseball and that kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good overall. I'm kind of slipping in the Couch Tomatoes League myself. I got to get back on track there. Still in the top 100, top 70, I think, in the TGFBI out of about 320 teams. So that's pretty cool to do that in the first year. So hopefully I can keep that going. Offense is good, pitching struggling a little bit. So you can find me, of course, on Twitter at The Real Ma Day. Getting ready here in a little bit with my guys Nate Dokken and the Manly Van Lee. We are going to record Fantrax Dynasty Baseball, and the 200th episode of the Nasty Cast is going to be recorded tonight as well.
Wow, that's special. That is a big deal right there, man. 200.
Very
Congratulations. Cool. Tell the boys I said congrats as well. Also remind them it's football season, and I'm supposed to have my yearly, I will event on there. But anyway, no, congrats for that. That's fantastic. That is definitely one of the best out there, folks. If you're a baseball guy, definitely put this on your podcast list to listen to every week. These guys do a great job breaking down everything from minors to majors, and they do a fantastic job. All right, super. All right, so of course you can find me on Twitter at Bob_Lung. Don't forget to go get your consistency guide, award-winning consistency guide for FSWA last year. If you want the hard copy, go get it on Amazon. Just search 2019 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Basically, that'll pop up as soon as you start typing it. And also remember to get signed up for the Expo. Sunday, August 18th, Canton, Ohio. Get there and, hey, come in a day early. Come see the Kings Classic Draft as well. We'll be there in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, Ron, thanks again for being a part of this week. And next week we'll be breaking down the wide receivers, and we'll be looking at those guys just like we did with running backs. Which ones are going to break out? Which ones are going to rebound from maybe a disappointing year last year, whether it was injuries, whether it was just poor consistency, whatever the case may be, and we'll be doing that. So once again, for Ron Rigney, I'm Bob Lung. Everybody have a great week. Take care. God bless. And talk to you.
Pros do it right to take their business to the next level by relying on trusted brands to get the job done. Lowe's is here to help and help you save. For your next stain job, get a gallon of Valspar One Coat Transparent Stain Plus Sealer starting at $35.98. And we now offer the Little Giant King Combo Ladder, the world's first step, extension, and leaning ladder, giving you the flexibility to do just about any job for only $159. For trusted brands that make the job easier, do it right for less. Start with Lowe's, U.S. only.
Let's consider the secret life of the innermost nesting doll. Living most of her life in the dark, inside the other nesting dolls, she has plenty of time to think, if she could. Sadly, she has no brain. However, when an innermost nesting doll hears that Geico not only saves people money, but also has been providing great service for over 75 years, she thinks it's obvious you should switch. Because yes, switching to Geico is a no-brainer. Pity the innermost nesting doll and her lot in life.